Hi, Facebook friends. Good morning. Helen Archontou here, CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. So happy to have some time with you today. If you are in our New Jersey area, it may look like a kind of rainy, snowy, gloomy day, but not for me because I get to spend the morning with Assemblywoman Valerie Vainieri Huttle, which is always a light for me to have time with her. And for all of us, it's an absolute gift that we have her in Trenton doing what she does best, which is serving now her 8th term representing the 37th district. And if you are familiar, or if you're not familiar, you really should go check out her page and see all the tremendous legislation and all the committees and all the policies that she has authored and been part of supporting that has really made New Jersey a safer place for everybody, but especially she's definitely been very focused on the needs of women, families, survivors, and of course, you know, our aging population. And we are so grateful to have some time with her today to talk about some very, very important issues. So with that, before I jump in, let me quickly just share a little bit about her background. As I said, she previously served as chair of the Assembly Human Services and Assembly Homeland Security and State Preparedness Committees. In 2020, she was appointed as the chair of the inaugural Assembly Aging and Senior Services Committee. And as chair of this committee, her role was to examine the state response to COVID-19, particularly its impact in the long-term care industry. And as we know, that has been a real issue here in New Jersey. So we are very lucky to have her, you know, at the helm of examining that issue. She's dedicated to advocating for the aging community, for their families, and to ensure that all New Jersey residents have the ability to age with dignity and respect. And she sponsored several landmark legislation and laws, including the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights, the Human Trafficking Prevention, Protection and Treatment Act, and the Stephen Komenos Bill to protect individuals with developmental disabilities from abuse. She also led efforts to reform the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and has been at the forefront of promoting LGBTQ and women's rights. Most recently, she authored several pieces of legislation to overhaul New Jersey's long-term care system, ensuring that the state and our long-term care facilities are prepared for public health emergencies. In addition to all of that, Assemblywoman Huttle is currently working on legislation to better protect and support sexual assault survivors, as well as legislation to expand access to reproductive health care services in New Jersey. And she's a mom, and she's a grandmom, and she's a wife, and she's a friend. And we're so happy to have some time with her today. Welcome, Assemblywoman.
Thank you, Helen. And first of all, I'm so honored to be here this morning. And I think most importantly, you are my friend because we've been through many battles together trying to help victims of sexual assault and so on. And I have to applaud your show because even through the pandemic, you have continued and persisted, as I would have expected, to help communicate and making sure that everyone has access to resources. So I truly applaud you, my friend, Helen.
Well, I thank you. And, you know, fun fact, we share a birthday too, folks.
That's correct. We are birthday twins.
Which makes this especially linked. But, you know, I have to say and throw that back to you too, because you and your team have been working so hard during this time. And, you know, and I know that you've kept at the paramount the safety of your team, you know, in that as well. But, you know, you've not taken this time to sit back. If anything, you know, we've watched you go full speed ahead, and obviously, you know, having some really, really important issues that are, you know, in front of you that appear during this time. So, so let's jump into talking about some of them. Maybe, I know, obviously, so much of the work that the two of us have done together has been around sexual assault and support for survivors. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, I know you've introduced sweeping reforms, you know, in this area for us. Can you talk to us a little bit about this package and what motivated you to put it to, you know, out there?
Sure. And you're absolutely right, because my staff, I have to give a shout out to them. They have continued to work throughout the pandemic, whether it was remotely and staggered into the office, helping constituents, whether it was unemployment, and now, of course, with the COVID vaccines, trying to navigate. So we have been working 24/7. I think through this pandemic, people are working even longer because there's no cutoff in hours when you're working from home. So I want to give a shout out to my staff. So thank you. But yeah, the legislative package actually came out of the policy recommendations that were brought actually forward by Katie Brennan, an incredible survivor who's really channeled her experience and trauma into action and advocacy, which I have to applaud many of these survivors because, when the Me Too movement started, I think you and I probably spoke a few years ago. We heard that first quote.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, this is an epiphany. This is going to give strength and support to women that have been in the shadows for so long and afraid to come out and speak, and give them the resources to survive. So, I applaud all of the survivors that have come forward to advocate. And Katie Brennan and others released, recommendations in February of 2020. Almost a year ago. And my office and staff immediately got to work to draft legislation. We worked alongside it in addition to Katie, I have always worked with the advocates of the New Jersey Coalition Against Sexual Assault with Patricia Teppenhart to draft these bills, and their input has been invaluable. So this legislative package includes about 9 bills, and I believe if passed, and I'm hoping it will shortly get to the governor's desk, it would really create sweeping changes and reforms to how our system interacts with survivors and victims of sexual assault. We only have a few minutes to go into it, so I'll try to highlight some of it.
Thank you.
But for example, it would include how to improve how law enforcement handles sexual assaults. That's the first chain of command or interaction between a survivor, right? So we would try to streamline the process that allows survivors to submit a form to the police outlining any inconsistencies that they observe within the police report. Sometimes they don't, or let's say at this time, they don't have the wherewithal to make sure that the stories, what they're saying, is consistent with the interpretation of law enforcement. So it's not a question of right or wrong. It's a question of clear and concise, consistent reporting. And I think in particular, many survivors in New Jersey have that right, but very few know about it. So again, it's about making sure that survivors can do this in a way that would help better communicate and protect them. And additionally, the package includes a bill that requires survivors to be given a package of information about resources, right? Because it's all about getting that information out, well-detailed information about their rights under the law. Many of them don't understand or even know where to start to navigate the system, and they don't know what their rights are. And let's face it, even if you're pulled over, right, for a traffic ticket or whatever, and a law enforcement officer comes, you feel intimidated. Yeah. It's just the nature and the culture. So when we're doing something so traumatic and important as this, we need to give them that confidence and security to make sure that they feel protected. And another bill would mandate the establishment of sexual violence liaison officers. And currently all police departments that are specially trained in domestic violence, we need to expand that. We need to make sure that those involved are educated and they have the staff on hand, so to speak, who can do the same thing for cases of sexual violence. Again, and Helen, you know this because you work, firsthand with victims. The decision to come forward is a really difficult and scary time. And I think we should do everything to make that experience comfortable and safe for them. You know, to try to prevent further re-traumatization. You know, being traumatized once is way more than enough. To repeat that and feel re-traumatized is really a crime. And you know, we need to make sure that the survivors would be treated again in legal proceedings, that they have a seat at that table on an equal footing. So I think, though, one of the most important bills in the package is to make sure that our county prosecutors, and some of them already have training, but to make sure that they undergo training on how to properly handle, you know, sexual assault cases, ensuring that they're trained to treat survivors with respect and dignity. I'm not saying that they don't, and most of them do, but to make sure that if we codify this into law, it's changing the culture of the environment of law enforcement. You know, it would require prosecutors, for example, to notify survivors when a decision has been reached. You know, what we have been learning from my advocates and working together with them, that some of them, quite frankly, find this information through the newspaper and or other outlets. And I think, obviously, I think we all could agree that they deserve the respect. And so I think, you know, this whole package, again, is for the survivor to make sure they are treated fairly and equal, giving them the tools to be able to understand and navigate the system and communicate it properly. I can go on. I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah, I mean, that was a wonderful overview. And, you know, again, just for our viewers, and I can speak to this as being someone who spent my entire career, you know, focused on supporting survivors of sexual violence. And I can actually say that my entire career,
yeah, and,
you know, doing this work, that, you know, it's amazing to see such a comprehensive and holistic group of bills come to pass. And although, you know, each year we've done a little bit of work towards this, towards trying to create a better environment and better support for survivors. This takes it to a whole different level for sure. And I'm so grateful for all of your work and, you know, all of everyone down in Trenton, you know, for the work on this. So let us know, what can we do to help? I know it's waiting for the governor to sign. Who do we call? Who do we email? Who do we write to?
Well, we will get this out in committee, and then I think it's gone through the Senate. So we've got a first hurdle underway.
Yeah.
And I can assure you that once it reaches the governor's desk, I'm confident that he would sign this. As always, you can email your legislators and make sure that they are, you know, again, this should be out in a bipartisan way, because sexual assault and survivors are not just Democrats, you know, or Republicans. It doesn't know politics or political lines, or, you know, so this, I believe, is important to everyone. And I think that's why we have widespread support. But again, with your advocacy and help, I think we can get this done in a time frame that's hopefully quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Hopefully we get there, because of our scheduling. We have to prioritize which bills are coming out. So I think this is of utmost importance. And so I'm hoping that we do this. You know, we talk about, I can remember you and I years ago, and my daughter was in college. So this is probably going back, I guess, let's see, she's out of college now a few years, maybe about 6 years ago. I remember when we were visiting college campuses, you know, that rape crisis center was always like in the shadows and, you know, hidden. And I went down to speak to my daughter. She had her sorority, and she hosted a little get together for me to talk about affirmative consent and yes means yes back then. Do you remember that?
Yes,
you were involved with that.
I do.
I went thinking I was going to go into her sorority house and talk to a few young women. And she organized a big group in an auditorium with boys. And she said to me, she says, "Mom, the girls get it. We need to have the boys understand." And that spoke volumes to me. So this is not a women's issue. And as a parent, and we all have boys to raise, we want to make sure that they understand, the ramifications and the respect and the dignity that everyone deserves. So I think that's important to note, because I remember you were there with me when we were doing the consent, the affirmative consent. And that was something I cherished, that my daughter, was smart enough to understand to bring the boys in, because I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, well, so, I'm not surprised that she had that foresight, and it's obviously it's important for everyone to understand and age appropriately. I mean, I have 7 twins, and I'm already talking, about these issues with them, and so I do implore parents and folks in our community. And what I think is so important to remember also about this issue is that survivors, this is also, not only is this not a political crime or a political issue, it's also a genderless issue. Survivors are male, survivors are female, a survivor, right? And it's the numbers of sexual assaults in the transgender community are off the charts. And, we are so grateful that survivors like Katie Brennan are able to come forward and share their experience, because we know what the trauma that they've been through to begin with, and then to have to take that extra step to create, opportunities for, better care, better treatment for all survivors. So, so grateful to her, so grateful to you. And, and you're right, this is not a new issue for the two of us. We've been working on this for years. And actually, for our viewers, very soon we'll be having an episode that's connected to something that the Assemblywoman and I also did side by side, walking on a college campus together, which was bringing our app, Healing Space.
That's right.
We run the Sexual Violence Center for Bergen County. We created the first app for the state of New Jersey on sexual violence. And we have done some significant updates to that app, adding, what technology has impacted the abilities to now do text-to-chat support for our hotline and for our app, and that's all been integrated. And we'll be talking about that at a future YWTV very soon. But the idea for that app came from a conversation the two of us were having, walking side by side on a college campus together. So we've done a lot of good together on this topic, I could attest. So thank you for that. So I don't want to switch gears too dramatically, but I'm going to switch gears a little bit to a different topic, because again, I know that it's been such a focus for you over this time. And just last, I'm trying to think when it was, last week or the week before, my mom, my 90-year-old mother, was reading her AARP newsletter, and she was reading about your work.
Oh, you're supposed to send that to me.
I know. Oh, I've got that for you. But she was sending. She was reading about the work that you're doing in this area. And I just thought it's so important for everybody to hear what is happening and what you've taken on and where we are with that. Because since we have been home and we have been watching the news, this issue that in the long-term care facilities has been so, such a topic that, we've all been made aware of.
Yeah, as chair of Aging and Senior Services, we took this up immediately because at the onset of COVID-19, it quickly became apparent that this virus was going to disproportionately, impact not just our senior population, but specifically seniors living in nursing homes and congregate settings. And it was tragic and so sad that we saw as roughly half of New Jersey's COVID-19 deaths were in nursing homes. And in response to this, Governor Murphy hired a team of experts to audit New Jersey's long-term care system. And the Manat report, the Manat Association who did the audit, it came out probably in the end of May. And in June, we took this up and we had passing reform in August. So we really worked, vigorously and laser focused on trying to repair the nursing homes. And what the report actually found, and it wasn't just in New Jersey, but COVID-19 exacerbated some of the flaws in the system. But executing emergency preparedness protocols were not immediately in place. And nursing homes didn't receive, the PPE equipment in time to prevent infections. So unfortunately, long-term care facilities had to close their door to visitors in time, to prevent the spread. But there was systemic issues. And, unfortunately, our long-term care facilities had a history of some deficiencies, not all, but some. And, we needed to address that. So in the package, again, we worked so hard, and I was so proud that the governor signed these, because hopefully we are and ready not only now, but for future outbreaks, and not even for outbreaks, but the whole system in general should raise to be that gold standard of a safety net for our most vulnerable in those facilities. So what we did, we prepared emergency response protocols for any future health emergency, right? And we have implemented a long-term care emergency operations center, which really is like a centralized command center and resource center for the state. And I was also proud to champion, we talk about funding, right? We need to make sure that funding is in place for staffing. Many of these aides and members of staff that worked in these facilities went from, one facility to the next. And so I was happy to have the support and help from the state and federal government to allocate $62.3 million to long-term care facilities to support them, not only in staffing, which is, going directly to direct care workers with a pay increase, but in purchasing PPE. And so, again, we have a task force now in place. From the beginning of the pandemic, we were fielding calls every day from family members, how they could stay connected to their loved ones. So another piece of legislation that was signed into law was to prevent social isolation. Social isolation for anyone can cause anxiety, mental health issues, depression. We get it. So under the bill that was signed into law would be that each facility would have to be able to have some type of technology, as simple as even having a phone available for FaceTime, so that their loved ones could connect to their loved ones. And I think that was so important. And we did that for the long-term care facility. And yesterday I was in a Human Services Committee meeting, and I sponsored another bill that if we did this for the long-term care facilities to prevent social isolation, we need to do this for the disability community as well. Yes. So trying to address the social isolation issue for long-term care facilities, and then, as I said, making sure they have the proper PPE, the pay increase for that direct care staff, that they're there every day, and to make sure that those emergency protocols are in place. And I think that's really the right step, or regardless of the pandemic. As I said, COVID-19 exacerbated many of the flaws. So I'm hoping as we move forward, it doesn't have to be a COVID-19 outbreak to make sure these are in place. These should be universal precautions and protections and safety every day. And, we depend on these facilities for our loved ones. You and I are in that sandwich community. We have older parents and we have our children, and we need to make sure that we have assistance and resources as we move forward.
I couldn't agree more. And I know a lot of people may not be at the stage in life that they are involved with these, facilities, but this is not a COVID problem. This is
right.
Definitely an issue. But thank goodness that now that the attention has been put here, that this help has been put in place, and that the staffing has been supported this way. I mean, when we talk about unsung heroes over this time that people maybe not thinking about, these are folks that are caring, for our family members, at their most vulnerable time.
Yeah.
And it's important for them to be compensated properly and to be protected. for sure. So thank you so much to you and the whole committee for, keeping, this issue and, at the forefront and putting these processes and policies and reform in place.
And again, Helen, it's a bipartisan,
Yeah.
effort, because again, these issues that I deal with, these human services challenges, um, we're all faced with that. And so I'm happy to have broad support. And that's why I try to expedite my bills through committee and make sure they reach the governor's desk. Because when I first introduced the package in June, I said to the speaker, I said, we have to prioritize these and we have to get this done before that second wave hits.
Yeah.
And we all anticipated it. And now we're in the final months. I'm hoping that February is it. And, most of the vaccines are distributed and we have the protocols in place and we can go back to some type of normal and keep everyone safe. Because let's face it, even though we have these protections in place, there's still the risk of COVID and the spikes, and just hopefully we're able to treat it and survive it.
For sure. Well, and one other issue kind of popped up that I wanted to raise, although I know we weren't really planning on talking about it,
Right.
but I noted that Senator Weinberg had sent a letter to the governor today addressing the issue of women inmates being beaten and by the staff at the Edna Women's Correction Facility. And, I know that this has been an area that there's been some spotlight on trying to put some reform efforts in place. And I wanted to make sure our viewers were aware, what's happening and just get your, I thought her letter was obviously important and pointed, as it rightly so. What are your thoughts on this issue and, how to help, this resolved?
Assemblywoman Yvonne Lopez and I sponsored the Dignity Bill, Dignity for Women Incarcerated. And let me just back up with the Edna Man facility. It is the only women's facility in the state. We had the rare opportunity to speak to some of the inmates or prisoners or women that were in there, quite frankly, for crimes that they're paying their dues for.
Right.
But the abuse that they were under or being attacked physically by staff and officers, it was appalling. No way to treat a female inmate in a jail, because dignity, and no matter what, again, and these crimes could have been easy drug violations.
Mm-hmm.
So I was horrified at the news, because this bill was signed, and U.S. Senator Cory Booker, we modeled the piece of legislation after his federal legislation. And part of this was to make sure when women are in these facilities, they are close to their families. A lot of these women have children, grandchildren, and there's no reason why they can't have at least the interaction of family while they are in prison. Again, no one should be treated that horribly. This report that came out yesterday, one woman's eye was knocked out of her socket. To me, it was so appalling and disgusting. And even though we have these bills in the works and we've had one signed, clearly more needs to be done. We have to let the investigation play out. And everyone in that facility, I'm shocked, because it was already highlighted last year, and that's when we worked on some of these bills, that same facility that was under investigation can have now 3 incidents like this. One woman now was so beaten up, she's in a wheelchair. It shouldn't happen to anybody. This is a human, again, another issue when we deal with women and human services. Yes, they're paying their dues, they're paying for their crime, they're in a facility, But does that mean that they should be attacked and physically abused? So no one deserves that. And again, they need, many of these women that I spoke to were in for light crimes. When you think of a prison, you think of, first degree crimes, but I'm talking to women that were in there for shoplifting, and again, it all comes down to whatever kind of discrimination is out there. Victims of prostitution. And we all know that's another area of trafficking that they're being prosecuted and not the perpetrator, right? So when you look at and hear their stories, they were very compelling, and no one again deserves this abuse. So yes, we're calling on the investigation to come to a clear, concise decision, whether someone has to hand in their resignation. But we will continue to monitor and make sure that other bills that we are drafting can prevent this, because to me, that's a crime.
Well, it absolutely is. And for those of you watching, I do encourage you to keep an eye on the stories and, to stay connected to your elected officials and be let them know that, these issues are a concern to you. Senator Weinberg and I sat on a panel of Latinx International Film Festival's talk back for the documentary Belly of the Beast, which, was about atrocities that happened in a California prison. And here we are in New Jersey. It's happening right here in our state.
And when you see the TV shows years ago, when the first show came out, Orange is the New Black, that's reality.
Yeah. And we should be concerned about these issues as well, everyone. So please, make sure that your voice is heard as well. Well, I could keep you here talking all day because there's so much to say. We are so grateful to have you fighting for us. And you can see that from the comments from our viewers as well. So much gratitude that you are in Trenton and that you have the record and the resume that you have and the history of just fighting for, women, girls, families, survivors, our aging population, our inmates. I mean, you're protecting and thinking about everybody, and that's exactly, and also working on both sides, politically, at the end of the day for the good of our citizens. And we're so grateful that we have you in office.
Thank you, Helen.
Thinking that way.
And we're grateful to have you doing the good work, because without you and the advocates, this is where we get our strength and our information and our ideas, quite frankly. So thank you.
Well, we're a good team. We're a good team. Happy to work together. For those of you watching today, we do encourage you. I know that everyone can't be tuning in when we do our Facebook Lives, but that doesn't mean that anyone needs to miss the information. Please consider sharing this feed. It's easy to do by copying the link, and you can send it in an email to your friends. You can send it to someone in particular you wish you had seen it, or you can share it to your Facebook page or send it through Messenger. It's important for people, especially here in New Jersey, to know what's happening in our state and what our great Assemblywoman is doing on our behalf and ways that we can support these important issues that we've discussed today. It is a team effort to keep our state safe, and there's a lot of work to do, so we all need to be part of it. And later we have lots still. I know it's Tuesday, but there's a lot still to look forward to on YWTV tomorrow. Sherry Pullman, founder and CEO of Pullman Productions, and I will be talking about the importance of dreaming and how you can incorporate that into your daily life and what the benefit of dreaming is. I personally, am someone who always keeps a wish list. That's a big wishes, and it's definitely been handy to have, because there are moments that happen, like when Mackenzie Scott showed up with $3 million for the YW. When you can go to that wish list and, think about what you want to do. So please join us for that. On Thursday, we continue our Share the Mic Now project, which is about amplifying the voices of Black women in our community. And we're so grateful to have Dr. Tanya Raggio Ashley on, who also was part of the panel with Senator Weinberg and myself for the Belly of the Beast talkback, and looking forward to talking with her. And we end out the week with Alyssa Hunt, the program director of Alice Paul Institute. Alice Paul had a big birthday. We've had a lot to celebrate. And, it's important to, to talk about some of our sheroes. So we look forward to ending the week with her. Please feel free to sign up for a 21-day social justice and racial equity challenge. We'll have the links here for you. Please think about sharing information about our senior fitness classes, which include chair yoga, Zumba, Fit and Fabulous. My mom's downstairs doing chair yoga right now, which is free for our Bergen County residents, thanks to the County Senior Services Department. So please go online and register for that. And coming soon, for those of you who have teen girls, keep an eye out. We have a program that we're getting ready to launch called the Color Complex, which is all about a conversation around colorism in our communities, and a conversation for our teen girls of all colors to come together and be part of that discussion. So thanks for being with us, Assemblywoman. We'll let you get back to your important work.
Thank you, Helen. Stay safe, and best wishes to your mother. She's an inspiration doing that yoga. Thank you.
Get down there.
Hopefully to see you soon. Stay safe.
Yes, stay safe, everyone. Safe travels today.